Good everyone, welcome to this video, and today it's a review on the B3C, the very first bomber that you can unlock for Sweden. Well, twin engine bomber, shall we say. And well, it's not off to a great start. This is probably the only aircraft that I've had a bad time in for the most part. And well, it's a bomber. I normally like bombers, but this thing is not great. So the B3C is essentially a Swedish-built Ju-86, which I've wanted the Ju-86 in War Thunder for a while, simply due to its historical relevance. Obviously, Mark V Spitfires, obviously climbing up to intercept Ju-86Ps, but I've always wanted it in game. It's always been one of those aircraft that it's just been unloved in War Thunder, and it should be in War Thunder. And well, let's just say the Swedish variant, I'm not happy with. It got the job done, but I'm not happy with it. So we are armed with three 8mm machine guns, which have terrible stock belts. Obviously, the other Swedish bombers with this machine gun, they have terrible stock belts. I mean, look, pure tracer, Jesus Christ. As soon as you can, get the 8mm belts and just put APT shells in them. Trust me, you're going to get a lot better experience. So obviously, with it being based on the Ju-86, there is obviously a few changes to it. Obviously, the Swedish machine guns and different engines, which are Bristol Pegasus XXIV, which I believe is 24 in the Roman numerals, 9-cylinder radials, with 940 on normal power and 1116 on web. The engines are fine. That's not what I have a problem with. The main problem is the problems, I should say, with this aircraft are that machine guns obviously lack damage when they're stock. The machine guns aren't the best when they're upgraded either, except for a good spot near the tail, which I believe I show you in this battle. Um, and overall, it just doesn't feel great at all. Now, don't get me wrong, this thing can get the job done, but for what it is, it's just not great, and the dive speed is horrible. You got nearly, well, I get nearly into the red line at 270 miles an hour. That's pretty bad for a 1-point-ish bomber. To put that in perspective, the B-10B could leave this thing for dust, and that thing's not exactly fast. That's what really let it down. And also, it's got the same landing gear problem as the Hawk 3. Its landing gear takes almost a minute to come up. I really don't like this plane all that much. So in terms of bomb load, you've got 16 50s, which are enough for a base. You can also carry a torpedo, which I never got to use, and also 4 120-kilogram bombs. Now these are okay bombs. It takes, I believe, 2 per base, and well, they get the job done. They're pretty nice bombs to use, so that's always nice. But this is really the maximum payload that you're going to get, and it's not impressive. It's good enough for a 1.3, but it's not the most impressive. To put that in perspective, the Catalina can carry 4 1000s. But if it has to drop 2 at the same time, but you get my point. And obviously, Gaijin being Gaijin, they can't even be bothered to set it as defensive or like defensive 8mm. That's how lazy they are, but trust me, there's a funnier one. Example, this J11, it's got the Russian look of the 12.7mm section. So let's get into the stats of it. Let's see how I did. 1 death, which was a complete bollocks death, and 1 air kill, 13 ground targets. The death that was complete bollocks was a Ki-27 Otsu flown by a Smurfer. Pulled up into the vertical, sat right where my 2 machine guns were. I pounded and pounded him. It did nothing, pretty much. It only knocked out his engine. And yet he's able to pilot snipe me when the plane was looking at him like this. Sure, that can really be pilot snipe, can't it? But hey, I don't make the damage models. Because, well, if I did, this thing would not have been dead. He would have been dead. But hey, he's a Smurfer. He had a low-level account, so that's just typical. I will say this, though. That is a really cool-looking turret design. That is nice. I do like that. So let's get into the battle and let's have a look at why I'm not a huge fan of this thing. I just don't like it. It doesn't feel that great. Don't get me wrong, it gets the job done, and I do fly it a bit silly this game. But if you really want a Swedish bomber, get yourself the B18A. You'll see what I mean when I review it. So luckily this battle's a little shorter so I can spare my voice, thankfully. Excuse me. I'm doing a whole pile today just to get me started. Now there's going to be a lot of action in the chat, however most of it appears to be Spanish. I think. I haven't done Spanish in... how long's it been? Spanish hasn't been done for me in about 14 years, because last time I did was in year 1, year 2. I still remember a bit of Spanish, but very little. So obviously I've got, this is my, I think this is my 3rd flight of this aircraft. I think this is the one that got it done. It might be my, I think I had 4 flights in this plane. But obviously I'm just working over some ground targets here. The handling didn't feel great, and there's also a pretty funny flap bug with this aircraft. Essentially, one flap goes up like an air brake, one flap goes down like a flap should, basically. Again, had that slip past QA. Oh wait, guys, you don't have none, it would seem. So I'm coming over, and this is a nice little artillery that I like to go for because, well, you can just dump all 4 bombs on it and you're guaranteed to get it. Because it's basically 2 artillery guns piled on top of each other, and they've never fixed it, so I always target it with bombers. Those are the only ground targets that I'm going to get this game, of course. But obviously at this point, I'm thinking, how can I be silly in this thing? So obviously I want to get this thing spaded, I wanted to get it done. And, well, obviously I'm just looking over and watching this B-18A almost get swarmed by many enemy fighters, let's just say. So at this point, I decided to go a bit silly. I do not recommend doing this in this aircraft. I was just being silly. Because I can. And to be honest, this is the most interesting battle I actually had in the thing. So obviously I'm coming down, and at this point I'm actually almost ripping my wings off because of the, not just the G tolerance of this aircraft being rather low due to it being a bomber, but just in general, this aircraft's dive speed is horrendous. If you listen carefully, you can actually hear the wind rushing past the aircraft. At this point I was hitting the red line. Now that B-18, well that B-17 pilot comes in, he's obviously getting a bit overconfident. JAA brakes, I brake, I turn it as hard as I can. The guy comes in, he scores a couple of hits. But then he decides to do the one thing you should never do to a B3C when it's got belts done on it. He enters the spot where 2 machine guns can fire, and just completely melts him. First and only air kill I got in this bird. That's pretty much my contribution to the battle. That's really how interesting this plane is. I really didn't have a good time in it. It was just so boring. And for me to say a bomber's boring, that is when you know it is boring. So at this point, I was just throttling back to see if the JAA would catch up to me. And, well, he breaks off. I think he didn't want to chase me, even though he was catching up. Spoiler alert. Yeah, he just didn't want to catch up, really. There's also a funny note I ought to make note of whilst I'm here. It would seem like this gunner really doesn't want to hold on to his machine gun. It just seems he's control it with Jedi mind control because, well, he's not even touching the gun and yet it was firing on its own. Same with this guy, and yet this guy's actually holding his gun. Just saying. So obviously I'm coming in for a landing now, and, well, yeah, this thing's not that interesting. Just watch what I have to do for a landing approach. So it's around about this point I'm going to start dropping the gear. And, well, as I said, it feels like a minute. And, well, here's the flat bug for you. There you go, one's up, one's down. That's probably the funniest thing, excuse me, about this plane. But this is one of few times I actually got to land this aircraft. And, well, I don't even think I'm putting the gear down. Yep, the gear's coming down now. That's how slow the gear is. Obviously, I'm right on the area where this aircraft would probably be okay in terms of controllability. But obviously, I'm going for the landing. Obviously, the gear's slowly coming down. It's going to lock, thankfully, before I get on the ground. However, unbeknownst to me, there is an F-222, which is the last guy on the enemy team, coming in to bomb our runway. And for some reason, he decides to try and choose me as his bitch, which, I mean, okay, but the gear's down and locked, and I'm thinking, I saw him, and I was like, he's not going to try and bomb me, surely. He does. So one of the enemy fighters says, literally get off the ground because he's targeting you. But yeah, you can see why I'm not enthusiastic about this plane. But obviously I looked at that and Fode puts in check, get off the runway, and he's coming for me. So I throttle up, but if you really think I'm going to be putting in a gear when it takes nearly a minute to go up and down, you've got another thing coming. So I leave the gear down, because I can't be arsed. Excuse me. And obviously there goes the bombs. He was aiming right for my position, but I put the flaps back down. And, well, I just land the plane, and that pretty much is the end of the battle for me. But I'll show the landing, not like it's anything elegant. I just put the thing down and make sure it gets to a sufficient stop, and then obviously we repair and rearm. But yeah, that's really all I got out of this plane. Not very interesting in the slightest. But I mean, it is a start. And, well, let's just say the very next bomber which this guy's flying is a heck of a lot better. But I don't think this guy knew it. You'll see what I mean. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video on the B3C. Like I say, it's not interesting all that much. I mean, it is a Ju-86, so I kind of did want it in game. But this was a bit of a boring plane to play. And for me to say a bomber's boring, you know it's quite boring. Anyway, I'll let you guys off. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all on the next one.